No, it's a good morning, brother. So I just have to reiterate that I lost my bet with myself. My bet was today's a Sunday, so am I going to get because I'm going to get the hoodie because it's cold, and I might get the blue style suit or the non-blue style suits, right? And because that's the order, right? Depending on the day. So I was playing this rock, paper, scissors game, and I lost again. Like, you're completely unpredictable. It's terrible. I was expecting a hoodie, and I didn't get. And I got the rare one, which was the outlier. So I lost every game of rock, paper, scissors I play with you, man. I lose.
That's good. That's the way we like to play. It's like unpredictability. It's a vital feature. We got to outsmart the neural paucity has to be defeated.
All right. So you had a very smart question you wanted to lead with the sporting, because it for the audience, it's this.
My issue is this, and I will state it for the audience
Right.
quite plainly. The issue is this: is the science in my mind should avoid the use of specific identifiers, which are identities built for utilitarian purposes by people that are antagonistic toward Western civilization.
Right, but
because they gain advantage by your use of their identifiers.
See, okay, so here's the thing. How do you move from logical to empirical?
Okay.
Right? And so all right, that's number one. The use of examples is necessary to illustrate the logic is both logical and empirical.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, so that's number one. The second thing is the hard part, which is what you're getting at, which is that I'm not claiming we're brilliant because we discovered the right way of working with of maintaining evolutionary computation.
We being
I'm saying,
we being Western civilization.
Yes,
context.
I'm claiming it was a fucking accident of geography and circumstance and timing. And so likewise, I'm not saying that other people chose the less optimum means of evolutionary computation.
Right, that's correct.
It was a function of time and circumstance.
Accident.
Right? So that's the difference, which you made me clarify fucking 5,000 times now, between responsibility and blame.
Right.
Right? Cause is responsibility. Well, it's just attributable. Blame is when you do the fucking thing on purpose. So that's the difference between between amorality, right? A tort, right, which is something that you don't do on purpose, but it's still right, and a crime which you do on purpose. So
there you go.
Right. So there's amorality, tort, and crime.
Right.
Right. So if you're in, so the problem is some of these people don't realize that they're committing a tort. Because they think their traditions are fine. Their traditions aren't fine. That's the point. It's not, their choice of tradition was arbitrary. In other words, random, dependent upon circumstance.
So it wasn't choice. It was
right. Excuse me. Their evolution of a strategy, right, was not intentional. The thing is, once you know you're committing a tort, then when you don't stop committing the tort, you're committing a crime. So
it's what you call proper notice.
Correct. So you have to give people proper notice. It's like one of the principles of our law is no crime, no foul. No law, no foul. No law, no crime. No, it's just no harm, no foul. No law, no crime. Sorry.
That works.
If there's no law, you could still commit a tort. But if there's no law, you can't commit a crime, right? I mean,
so what we're doing is offering notice of tort, which leads to the implementation of law and the towards the punishment of crime.
Correct. And so the problem is, and I've been doing this all past 3 days because I'm very pro-Egyptian, I'm very pro-Persian, not fundamentals, but Persian as a group. You know, I'm basically pro every nation. I'm just anti-Abrahamic religions. Right? I would think of it that way.
So this is interesting because it's like, I want to clarify just for the record, which is to say the institutionalization of those religions.
Correct.
It's the institutions that are the problem, not the ideas.
Well, the ideas are a problem too. The whole point is, are you organizing around a religion or are you organizing around your nation? One of those is a fancy that has no means of empirical falsification. It just creates conflict. Nations don't. They exist. They're real. They're confident. So if you tell me do I want to have the Islamic civilization go forward? I'm like, no. If you tell me, do I want to have Egyptian, North African, Arab monarchies? Right? If you tell me you want a theocracy going forward, you're by definition operating on something that's not real, right? It's not only not real, it's a tort. And not only is it tort, once I tell you that it's criminal, and your opinion doesn't matter right? The opinion of a criminal doesn't make any difference. Whether you're acting amorally or as a tort or as a crime, it's not a question anymore. It's not a matter of opinion.
It's a decidable function.
It's a decidable function.
Okay. Because it's true or not true.
It's just true or not true. We have, and this is what's frustrating for peoples. So, I use the examples of every culture. The problem is I use the examples of the problems with cultures from the really outliers. Like I pick on gypsies all the time, mostly because it's funny. But I mean, everybody knows there's no net value to them, right? They're like the flies, right? You swat the ones that get in the house, but the other ones are just too annoying to go after.
It's not worth the effort, right?
It's not worth it. The next one, of course, is the Jewish problem, which is a couple of 1,000-year-old problem that everybody knows, and we're supposed to not talk about anymore because of the Second World War. But it's an ongoing problem, and it's still a problem. Well, I'm sorry, their group evolutionary strategy is a tort. It violates natural law. It's not an opinion. It's a fact. It's what it is, and we can show it empirically. Islamic civilization, if we show that beautiful video from what's his name that shows 1,500 years of warfare and the destruction of every civilization of the ancient world and their inability, despite burning through 3 races. You understand, they burned through 3 races. They burned through the Arab race, the South Eurasian race, and the Turkic race. They burned 3 races. I mean, it's like, that's pretty bad. And they're trying to burn through the sub-Saharan African race. It's not a question, because it's not a question anymore. So, the problem is that, I can't state the truth, right? Which is a question of only responsibility, but not blame, right? I have to be able to talk the truth because I have to move from logical to empirical.
Right.
And when I move from logical to empirical, I'm merely saying, well, these are mistakes, right? They're not even intentional mistakes. They're just evolutionary consequences. So you might be responsible for perpetuating your group's evolutionary strategy, despite that it's fucking evil, right? But, right, sorry, I'm just...
I'm just checking if you're awake, doctor.
I'm just seeing if I could get your reaction on you. You might be responsible for it, but when we talk about responsibility, what we're talking about is correction, right? We don't want you to do it anymore. When we're talking about crime, now we're talking about punishment. Because when it's a crime, you knew you were committing the crime. And now you have to be punished. because once you were informed, you did it anyway.
That's right. And that is limited to within the jurisdiction of that law.
Right. And so the thing is, people think these cultural differences are relative because they've been told by the Abrahamics that they're relative. They're not relative. There's no difference between physics, behavioral science, social science, politics, group evolutionary strategy, etc. And then it's the same freaking logic all the way through. We know because decidability's there. And the question is, say, well, how do I love with your degree of decidability? Well, decidability is available. The question is, you try to explain why you disagree with me unless you're involved in a crime. You can't. I promise you, you can't. It's the same argument for rational thought. The reason we can empathize with people is, and we can have juries, and the reason we can cooperate is because if I understand your incentives, so what the information you're operating on, I can understand your incentives, right? And it's easy for me to determine when your incentives are to be criminal or not. That's why juries work. Now, you might be criminal because you might be engaged in a tort responsibility simply because you don't know better or you weren't aware of doing the due diligence. You could perpetuate a crime without actually knowing you're doing so, right? But you failed to due diligence against committing the crime. So it's the same reason I talk about lying. And I get shit for this all the time. It's not that I'm wrong. It's just that there's no way of talking about this with using the English language
and remain polite.
Right. I mean, so a lie is a thing, right? It's a falsehood. This is a falsehood, right? But a falsehood is arbitrary, and a lie is for a gain or prevent a loss, right? Right. And so you can intend to lie. Or you can lie by a failure of due diligence against lying. Well, that's the same thing. You can commit a tort, right? You can commit a crime, which is you can create a tort, which is to transmit a lie. Be a carrier and a transmitter of a lie, even though you didn't intend to, right? But you failed due diligence, and so, or you can be a person who actually tried to lie, and it wasn't a failure of due diligence, it was diligence in creating the lie.
Yeah, it was a diligent activity.
Right. And so this is the same thing. You find people have a problem with that. If it's the old, but he gave me the bicycle. Yeah, but he stole the bicycle. Right. So you see this, there's like one of these videos a month that comes out on one of the cop channels, and it's like it's become so regular, it's funny. Is like somebody steals a bicycle or a skateboard, a bicycle, a motorcycle or something, right? Something a kid would want. And the kid buys it for like
10 cents on the dollar.
And, whatever, 10 cents on the dollar. But I paid for it. But did you do due diligence against it being stolen? Well, no. Then you're guilty of a crime. And you're out the money. Sorry, right? That's what it is. So this is the problem with the via positiva morality.
What's that?
Is that it's only about intentions. That your intentions matter.
I see.
Right? Your intentions don't matter. Right? What matters is that you perform via negativa, due diligence, against, regardless of your intentions.
Right, failure to properly audit your intended behavior.
Right. So, this is a pattern that's really common now. And so what you find is that people weigh intention and they imitate. So this is for very simple people, right? Well, what's the problem is as IQ decreases, what's the ability to deduce and infer?
Right.
Or follow chains of reasoning.
Diminished.
So the thing we do is we teach people what's supposedly good and bad, but we don't teach them reasoning behind good and bad. And the reasoning behind good and bad isn't one step that's good or bad. It's only good if it survives due diligence against being bad. but mommy, daddy, I don't know enough to do due diligence. You probably do. If you know why? Because it's an Occam's razor test. If it seems too good to be true,
That's it.
That's it.
Don't go for that. Like,
that's the minimum Occam's razor, is if it seems to be good to be true. So this is why I talk about this stuff. But, we're sitting here talking. I don't know what grade you'd have to be to understand that conversation we just had.
at least, I don't know. I think that it can be trained down very low.
Yeah, I think it'd be trained down very low. And once you do that, they make the kid just aware of it. And it's just like ethics class.
There's no excuse for taking advantage.
Right. It's just, or being taken advantage of. Right. If I steal the bicycle so I can get it across town, now I want to get it out of my hands, and I sell the $500 bicycle to you for $10 or $5, right? I've just paid you to take the responsibility for getting caught off my hands.
Right.
So you said, wow, I could get this really nice bicycle for the money in my piggy bank. If it sounds too good to be true, it is.
Hairs on the back of your neck.
It's like, I gotta really fuck this up. Can I screw this up with humor?
I'm good.
Yeah. You're still watching me with those eyes though. So it's like, why do guys reject women that come on to them?
Right. That's why. It's like
this doesn't happen.
Yes, it's right. This
it's
is
like
not normal behavior at all. It's like look, it's like a rabid animal. It's not right.
It doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it isn't good.
This is a problem. Oh my, that's exactly right.
Oh God. Anyway, so how did we get on that? We got on the problem of identities. So the problem is, you can have, like, I have a bunch of followers, and they're right in the Middle East, and I signal my appreciation for them by trying to use, translate into Arabic, use translation Arabic. So they know it's for them, right? And there's a certain speech pattern to Arabic languages that's different from ours. And so you have to sort of like, things have to be stated very clearly, right? Simple phrases. But because their language is very poetic, right? It's not as poetic as Chinese, but it's more poetic. So, their language is a little more poetic. The Chinese is really poetic. Theirs is sort of theological. It's somewhere between poetry and theology. The Germans is psychological. The Italians is romantic.
You're getting distracted.
What?
You're getting distracted from translation into the Arabic.
All right. So thank you. So it's translated. So just to show them. So talking to them, and there's a group of people who understand the problem perfectly. And they're like, well, this is just a problem for this religion is a problem for our people.
Huh.
Because when we had our own identity, we could act as a nation for our own benefit. And so we want our identity back. And it's particularly true in Egypt.
Huh.
And so because their great civilization isn't a lie. The same for the Persians. Their great civilization isn't a lie. So it's hard to actually look at the Mesopotamians and not go back a long way before you get to it was a great civilization.
Yeah, no, their thing, and it's like it's really fascinating to me is and I was writing about this yesterday after we spoke, which is about the Babylonian system of governance of large numbers of conflicted tribes.
Yes.
With distrust and disunification as their basic
strategy,
pre-organizational element. And it's like they have to organize people that are antagonistic and hostile, essentially. And right. So they tell a fictionalism that is sufficient to cause them to knuckle under enough to justify the overwhelming brute force that keep them in line.
Correct. And this is where they come from. This is where the Middle East comes from, this mentality. And so it's like you say, so do we blame them for being in the center of 4 continents, in the Fertile Crescent, which is concentration of food production? Do we blame them? Do we blame them? You're talking about a place that has an endless supply of the next group of hill or steppe people or desert people. They're going to come and raid the shit from your civilization as soon as you've accumulated enough capital. And because you've worked so hard to accumulate that capital and control all those competing tribes, what's happened is your population's exhausted.
Well,
right?
It's no way to do it. It's like, and the history of the area is telling, because it's the dominant group comes in from the hills and they're tough as nails, and then they get soft, and then they get beat by the next tough group, and it's just over and over again.
Right, and that's really, so when, what's his name, the Egyptian, the Muslim social scientist from North Africa, what's his name? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting it. He's like the proto Machiavelli for the Arab world, and it's insulting to Muslim thought that I can't remember the guy.
I'm sorry. No, it's
like
really,
not being able to. It's like being American and not recognizing the name George Washington. You know, it's just wrong.
It's unusual for you to be unable to insult, or insulting by accident. Like, I would look it up.
Oh God, I just can't pull it up.
He's a historian or a sociologist.
Well, what's the difference, really?
Okay.
And so that's his argument. He says this, but he's really describing the Muslim world, right? Because that's actually the process that they've gone through.
Right. Ahmad?
No, it's
Nope.
it'll come. It will come. It will come to me when I'm not thinking about it. How embarrassing.
I'm looking.
Anyway,
it's called Dune.
Yes, Ibn Khaldun. Thank you. So Khaldun's making that argument, and you know he was right. I mean, he's like, you know, you get to Quigley, and Quigley's up here, right? He's very close to what we're doing, which is first principles.
Oh yeah.
Right, and Khaldun's down there, and he's down there like in Aristotle territory.
Right. 650 years ago.
What?
He's 1406.
Yeah. So he's just before Machiavelli.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, this guy has got it. He sees it, right? He sees the problem. It's also visible by 1406 why Islam keeps failing. Right? And the problem is Islam's an underclass religion that enforces the ability of sequential rulers to take over and use religion to achieve this harmonization of tribes. But it comes at the cost of the absence of evolutionary competition between states, right? What you want is minor differences in religion and norm and tradition and whatever. You want the largest distribution of that, right? That where people don't try to go to war with each other. The problem is in that part of the world, because of geography, it's the only way to grow is to take over the guys next door. And the only way to defend yourself is to capture all the monetary resources to fund the biggest armies possible, so that you can prevent the other guys from doing the same, right? So whereas in Europe, our thing is sovereignty, right? So it's basically a bunch of peer aristocracies that are really, especially in the Middle Ages, they're all fucking this. It's all like three families, right? And so you're talking about this kinship system where everybody's it's like a business problem, but the people are relatively homogenous, at least in the spectrum of, Portugal to Moscow, right? I mean, it's a huge difference in development from, north across the center than out, but so what was the point? The point, it gets back to blame, is that, well, I have to be able to say the truth, right? But I started out my original argument with, look, everybody rebels against empiricism every time, because empiricism forces you to develop trust, because it slowly eradicates your ability to get away with gossiping, shaming, moralizing, undermining, whatever, and it gets you away from fraud, misrepresentation, loading, framing, and right. So empiricism gradually suppresses all the ways of getting away with shit. Well, the problem is people want to get away with shit, right? I mean, and so, you have really the Latin South, which, is still essentially corrupt, right? You have the Franglo Latin, right, which is a mixture of German and Latin, which turns out to be, by the time of Napoleon, fairly Roman, in other words, very authoritarian, feminine authoritarian. And then you have like the Germanic sphere, and Eastern Europe is really just, despite Russia's wants, Eastern Europe is economically dependent upon Germany. And Russia, of course, doesn't like this because it means they're left behind, right? And so Russia tries to expand, and they say it's because, well, you guys keep coming after, and I'm just like, well, look at how much we expanded and how you expanded. I mean, and look at the consequences of our expansion versus the consequences of yours. You kill 100 million people. I mean, so I mean, I don't know how you want to argue this, but definitely the development of commercial societies as it moves eastward is German. Get over it. That's why the monarchies in Russia were largely Germanic, and their fantasy was Europe, right? Those of France, right? They're trying to do France. Of course, what happens is the Bolsheviks come in and they ruin it. Now the problem is Bolshevism is Marxism, is a Jewish movement. You can't get away from it. A Jewish movement is an application of the female strategy. You can't get away from it. Now, the problem.
Wait. I want to clarify this. It's like this. It's an institutional representation of the
female strategy,
which is distinct. Okay,
but they've been saying, our Europeans have been saying that forever. They said, look, the minute you take the people who leave Judaism, and 3 generations, you can't tell who's a Jew and who's not.
Okay.
Right now, that's been around for, I don't know who the first guy who wrote that, but I can see him in my mind. He's in a photograph, right? So it's got to be back in the 1800s, right? But I mean, people have been saying something like this. So the problem, as you say, is there may be a genetic predisposition to the female means of thinking in the demographic, but the culture is which turns it into a system of warfare.
Right now, so this points to me to Whoopi Goldberg. Okay, because what I have to bring her in because
I know
she got in trouble for this very thing, and it's like this. It's like, and I think she was not entirely wrong, because I think that the issue was not so much race in Germany with the Jews, but cultural issues.
Correct.
They were complaining about and trying to remedy, and by whatever means, and
well, Germans aren't unique. Everybody's
no, and I'm not trying to justify what the Germans were doing, but I'm trying to clarify that Whoopi seems to have got the bad end of that.
Well, she considers them white.
Right.
Right. We don't consider Jews white. All right. And so what she's really saying, what bothered me is she's like, well, you have the advanced female group on the planet and you have the advanced male group on the planet. You both look white to me. And so I can't tell the difference between the advanced female group and the advanced male group, but right. Basically you both kick our asses and you don't like us. Right. And so, I mean, I can understand her position.
No,
right?
Yeah, so that's how I understood it. And it's like, it's just its own kind of racism, but that's fine.
Well, I mean, it's like, why do we use this term racism when everybody is?
I would tell you, but I don't want to irritate you with my excessive use of my Hebrew studies.
Okay, so here's the deal, is that race matters, and we know the degree to which race matters is dependent upon the proportionality and proximity, because all groups do favor kin selection.
Right.
They favor kin selection because people who are like you within a short genetic distance are easier to cooperate with than those that not.
That was hard.
It's just not difficult. It's lying about this that's the problem. And then you have the problem of the female intuition, which is
Okay.
the underlying problem, which is to see everybody at, what do you call it, is false consensus bias,
Right.
to avoid any concept or pretext for conflict by the presumption of commonality of frame and interest.
Right. Everybody's like me.
And so because of this, they are immune to observation of systemic differences, not because they aren't obvious, because they refuse to bear the cost of a of defending their own interests. In other words, they take a selfish interest. This is why it's not everything I say. Every time a female say they're caring, it's not. It's self-interest. When she's saying I'm caring about them, no, you just don't responsibility for managing the group's interests. So what you're doing is externalizing to the males,
Right.
who
Outsourcing.
you're externalizing the cost of domesticating those people. And you say, well, they're not a problem for me. Well, they aren't a problem for you, but your privileges are because of this broader group, right? Or
Right.
else you'd be eaten for lunch.
Right. That's my sister-in-law saying that there are certain parts of town we know not to go and we don't.
Right.
It's a intentional ignorance.
It's like there are no-go zones. I mean, I've said this before, but
Oh, yeah.
when in the 70s, the north end of Hartford, there's two ways to get to my college, right? And one is the quick way, and one is the long way.
One is the safe way.
And the long way is the safe way, and the quick way is the not.
I figured that.
And the quick way is a no-go zone.
Wow.
And so there would no, and I'm like, well, this is why Hartford's dying, right? Is because there's a no-go zone here. And so, Napoleon, of course, what he did is he took that part of Paris, just bulldozed it. Didn't have bulldozers, but just bulldozed it.
Metaphorical bulldozers.
That's actually the right answer. No, it is, because what you're trying to do is drive up the cost of access to opportunity costs. So there's no ability for that population to concentrate into a region where it can create no-go zones. So the cities do the opposite of what they should. Anyway.
All right. That's a good break point. Now you sent me a series that we can consider here.
Yeah?
Yeah, you did. You sent an email to me. Yeah, I'm pulling it up. This series has to do with narratives, types of narratives, ranging from correspondent to warfare narratives. And then the question is, how do people distinguish between them?
All right.
Right? You want to go over that?
Yeah, I'm just doing a copy pasta.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So one of here, this.
I'm going to share the screen.
Yeah, I'm just give me one more second. I'm almost there. Okay, now you can make me a host. Okay, I can find the controls. We're going to do it. Love you, man. Share screen. I think that's the right one. Is that it? Where are you? Desktop, Blue Chrome. Is that it?
There we go.
Does it say aside narrative there?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were just talking about how this goes to social construction, the concept of social construction.
You're sharing your email.
Sharing my email. I knew it was the wrong one. Google Chrome, edit Documenter. Desktop 2. Well, let's just do that one. No, that's don't know. Do you see
There we go.
aside Leninism,
Yeah.
aside? All right. So we just talked about uh, the difference between responsibility and blame, right? And tort and crime.
Right.
And lying and carrying a lie and intending a lie, right? But these are all the same problems. And the same thing applies to cultures. Your culture may be a carrier of a fraud or a crime, even if you don't intend. So the only way to fix it is do diligence on your culture. So people don't, the rest of the world doesn't believe it, but we're extremely self-critical as Europeans, and we're always self-auditing, right? And we learn, but just because we have the best group evolutionary strategy doesn't mean we don't make mistakes along the way. Right?
Yeah.
It's called, evolution's called trial and error, and there's plenty of error. Colonialism. Well, it turns out, unfortunately, you have to replace people. You can't colonize them because the European method isn't open to colonization. Whereas the Chinese method is open to colonization because it's authoritarian. So our whole thing is, our whole group evolutionary strategy is really successful, but it almost of necessity prohibits colonization. We have to, in other words, direct rule. What we have to do instead is we have to use incentives, right? We have to parent. We don't have to rule. Right? We have to brother. We don't have to rule. So what I was trying to get at in this example is that the same. So when we look at group narratives, right? Who was talking about this? I think it was some center left guys. They were talking about that everybody's looking for a narratives, right? And shit, I forgot the other one. And in parallel to it, I've got it right here. What else? There's one more. There's another piece to this, and I have to go find my own posts here, and it goes down to, here it is.
Okay.
What am I doing? All right. So, so we all have an evolutionary origin of our factions, and we all develop narratives to support them. People are looking for what they call sense making, right? They're looking for some way of organizing.
Which is a form of justification in a sense.
Correct. They're looking for a form of justification of whatever strategy is working. But regardless of how they justify it, in other words, regardless of the narrative they describe, that narrative can be correspondent with the laws of the universe, right? It can be European.
Right.
It can be utilitarian. It's a consensus narrative, right? You can have a fictional narrative. In other words, it can mean to coerce. It can be a fraudulent narrative. It can be means to engage in parasitism. It can be a devolutionary management. It can mean that it's self-defeating. It can be undermining narrative, which it is not self-defeating, but it's other defeating.
That's right. Self-harm, yeah.
Right? And undermining. And it can be warfare, right?
Oh, okay, distinguish between warfare versus undermining in that context.
This is physical. This is
Yeah, so this is what Western civilization would recognize as kinetic. Okay.
Right. Now, there is an undermining, and then there is an overtaking,
Okay, there you go. I like that. That's a good.
which is immigration
Oh,
conversion. Conversion propaganda.
okay. So there's two different. There's an intermediary function.
Right.
Yep.
We'll just move that down there, and then move. Oops. And then warfare. Now, you may not get it, but this is a narrative, right?
This is the story that the social group tells itself, and right.
Now, I want you to, again, notice what this is. It's correspondent, utilitarian, fictional, fraudulent, narrative, parasitic, devolutionary, undermining, overtaking, warfare, right? That's just a reordering
Of
that. Incremental
oh yeah,
suppression,
like yes.
right? So we would go from starting with criminal suppression, which is direct, to suppression to suppression up here. But when you're talking about stories, what?
Oh, okay, I'm good. I'm sorry to disrupt you.
So stories. So the problem for us
Wow.
is that we're engaged in the incremental.
That's it. Wait, who is in this context? You say we, who's we? That'd be the Institute for Natural Law. Right.
The incremental suppression of stories that are non-correspondent in order
Yep.
to maximize cooperation that leads to evolutionary computation.
Evolutionary. Yeah. Okay. This is interesting to me. I wanna make this correspondent to neurologic function. So
What do you mean? Give me that.
incremental suppression is inhibition. The social inhibition is what we're talking about. Now, and Enriquez talks about a filter between what he calls mind one and mind two, which is the social expression and the internal conversation in people. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's the tightening of that filter between thought and expression. Whereas in a lax state or uninhibited state, the criminal does the crime.
Yeah, what you're talking about is how did he, I would call it agency. See, right, and leads to due diligence. Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Avoidance of harm, right?
Right. So the problem is, these are agency and due diligence are not philosophical terms. What is he calling it? What does he call it?
He calls it a filter, and it's yes.
So you have,
yeah. It's mindfulness, right?
yeah, you have to, well, I just separate agency from mindfulness. Hopefully they grow together.
Okay.
mindfulness might lead to mindfulness. Lead to agency. How about that? That would work.
That works. But the impression, and it's like, see, this is, I thought that these middle left or center left philosopher types are they're going to be useful because they're on the same program. They see the same problems and they don't understand it in the same fashion, but I think that they're going to be corresponding or commensurate.
Okay, so can I finish the
Yes.
narrative before we go down to that? Because I think we need this one concept. So the problem is, how do people distinguish their variance from what's correspondence?
Variance will be their non-correspondence.
Say that again. How do people know?
Wait, their variance would be their non-correspondent aspects of their narrative, or the narrative they are subscribing to.
Yes. How do they know their narrative is non-correspondent?
And so you need a test.
Sorry?
You need
You need a test.
Right.
That's really it. So, for example, this is a similar issue to, so this is, okay, so there's a difference between a truth and a preference. And the same thing is true in different cultures. Right?
Right,
So
it's-
you might choose, go ahead.
Truth should be the same in all cultures.
Correct. But preference isn't.
Right. It's a universal truth, right? So any variation is attributable to preference.
So variations but externalities that's the issue.
Right. So we will notice externalities as an evidence of variation, variability, variation. Right. There you go.
Right? So this is where the problem is. How do you distinguish between what's good for you and externalities that happen? So here's a great example. Is our belief that democracy is a good. Well, it's not a good. It's actually a preference, and a preference that's a privilege from doing all those fucking costly things we do to develop high trust. Right? So when we try to spread democracy, we're actually screwing people up pretty badly. And then the second part of this is when they say we say we're spreading democracy, but we're spreading is capitalism, and they don't want anything to do with it. Well, I mean, that's true. But then when you ask them what capitalism is, they talk about they don't want to have women acting like two-bit whores and families falling apart.
Right.
So they're not talking about capitalism, we're talking about consumer hedonism.
Well, unfettered liberal
Right.
liberalism.
And then they're talking about what they really mean is they don't want us, capitalism produces inequality. They don't want inequality because their society is a bottom facing group evolutionary strategy. The problem is you have to produce inequality, a hierarchy, Pareto distribution, in order to move everybody upward. So it's not that you don't want capitalism. What you want is, of course, rule of law, and rule of law will produce a mixed economy.
Right.
And a mixed economy will maximize the rate of innovation and the investment in commons. The innovation will determine the surpluses, and the surpluses can be devoted to the development of commons, which decrease the costs of life for everyone, right? Because commons provide more returns than private consumption. For a whole lot of reasons, I won't go into that rat hole. So again, the point I wanted to cover is that you can get a no preference. So if some group of people can afford excessive redistribution, even if they're going to go into debt, maybe they want to do that.
Right.
Right. If some group of people wants to experiment with some lunatic fringe idea, well, that's fine. The problem is they have to pay for it. They can't externalize it. And so that's a violation of, it's not an opinion about that violation.
Like a violation of the reciprocity and cooperation.
So now this comes to the European post-war strategy. Now, without a lot of understanding, I mean, people aren't taught economics in this world. That's because they're taught ideology instead. Because if they're taught economics, it would lead to nationalism and federations instead of powerful central states, authority, and empires. But if they understood economics in the rest of the world like we do in Europe, what you'd understand is that the United States is driving down the worldwide cost. Actually, excuse me, the British Empire, then the United States, who inherited the British Empire in the post-war period, are driving down the cost of international trade, which used to require each nation, each state, to defend and supply its own monetary supply, its own troops, its own protection, its own transport, right? So what used to be what we called colonialism or imperialism is every group had to defend its own finance, transport, and trade. In the post-war era, everybody says, we'll finance the world supply of legal dispute, financial credit. In other words, we'll make sure you can't go bankrupt, transport and trade. We'll do all that, right? If you fight the Soviets, the communists, and it worked, right? So the problem is the world has become so used to this being a natural thing they don't understand. They've lost memory of the history of what happens when you don't have that kind of benevolent hegemon. Because our thing is everybody can play as long as you play by self-determination of everybody, respect for borders, and human rights. Right? Well, what does that mean? It's fucking property rights. It's natural law. Right? And so we said, as long as you abide by these rules, you can have it. We don't say the opposite. Unfortunately, we also say, yeah, this democracy thing is good and that will lead you to whatever. I mean, that's not clear at all. It looks like democracy is mostly a bad, because all it does is you can't have democracy until you've earned it. And you earn it by a military that develops a national identity that then produces a state, which then produces rule of law, which then produces a middle class, which then produces enough wealth to take people out of not wanting to race to the bottom, but instead wanting to race to the middle, right? You have to go through that sequence. And so we told people, you can jump over all that, and they can't. Did I do something wrong?
No, you're good. I want to get back to this variation, the test for.
I'm trying to get there.
Oh, okay, I'm good.
I really am. I know it's like, Kurt, you're going through this chain, and I think I'm losing. I'm going close to the caboose, and I don't know where the engine is anymore. Right? Maybe the audience doesn't either. So, but my point is that the Americans produced this post-war order. And so because they're ignorant, in other words, they don't have the knowledge of this order, or what we, in other words, we don't say, this is the basis of everything we do.
Right.
Prevent another world war, right? By constraining everybody to natural law. Natural law consists of sovereignty, reciprocity, whatever. And so we implement that as stay within your borders, don't externalize costs, and practice human rights internally. If you do that, we will finance trade, right? And we will suppress we will police the system so that all the world can join us in equal post-industrial prosperity. And then we can eventually all fall back to nation states, because this will be the normal state. Unfortunately, you can't fix China. It does look like we thought we could fix China and Russia, and we can't. The rest of we certainly can't fix Iran. We probably could fix the rest of the world. Anyway, so now that I get there, what the hell was I? Get me back on track.
Variation from the natural law is the test, and so it's like, how do we detect when you're deviant?
Okay, so the problem then is moral perceptions of difference, right? Because they believe what their culture does is good. They
Right.
don't realize it's a preference, not a good.
Hmm.
Right? They don't realize that we're paying an extraordinary cost to try to make a better world for them, right? Because they want to hold on to the past, because they don't want to adapt, right? Right? They just want the fruits of modernity without the costs. Why? Because all these cultures are lower trust. And so we're telling them, you have to build this trust, and they're having nothing of it.
Okay. Well, it's like this. So I'm at a more practical application of this. What is the test?
The test is variation from natural law.
Right, and but that's not that's a description of the test. The test appears to be full accounting for externalities.
Correct.
And that's when we talk about environmental externalities and social externalities and economic externalities that are not accounted for under the current system.
Yep.
Then that's where I point to the philosopher types who are in agreement with that basic principle, that there needs to be a full accounting because the accounting is poor.
Right. The thing is, when are we imposing a cost upon you because you need to pay it if you want the returns, right? Or when are you imposing a cost on the rest for not? Let me rephrase it differently. We're building the world oppressively in their world, in their frame of reference. The English, or the Europeans, specifically the English, the Americans, the Canadians, and the Australians. The Anglosphere is trying to build the world so we don't have another world war. That's our goal. That's our goal. And so, in our view, we are forcing you to become into a full accounting of the costs internally and externally, so that you reform, so that we don't have to have any more world wars. The problem is, we don't say that.
Right.
We don't say it. Right now,
it's not explicit.
Right, and I've always said, like, we talk about this democracy, and it's like, yes, you have the freedom of self-determination, but they don't flip the card around that says, but choose widely, because when we fix your government, because of the bad choice you made, you're going to get fucked in the ass. And that's what happens. They choose poorly. So why do they choose poorly? Well, they choose poorly because mostly we have too many post-imperial borders that need to be turned into nation states. In other words, ethno-states. And again, the Westerners can't tolerate that.
Who's that?
Because Westerners can't tolerate that the solution to world conflict is many ethno-states, right? So that it's possible to develop the trust that's necessary for the people to join modernity, right? Without, needing to generate demand for authority. So all these heterogeneous states generate demand for authority. They don't generate demand for federation or trust. So the only answer is, of course, if you're going to generate trust, you have to have low power distance, small ethno-states. Well, that's contrary to the post-war attack on Western civilization that's against nation states and against ethno-nationalism, because they've given us the false promise that we can maintain a high trust society under heterogeneous circumstances that put groups with different demographic profiles and different rates of maturity into conflict. Right? And so so it's not like we're completely right. It's like we have this great mission. The mission statement's probably pretty good, but it's half wrong. It says democracy is good and multiculturalism is good. These are both profoundly false. It's not only is democracy not good, jumping to democracy when you haven't gone through military nationalism, professional bureaucracy from the military, developing rule of law that creates the possibility for trust and trade, which creates a majority middle class, which then creates a demand for your lower classes to reach working and lower middle class status. You're not going to be able to have democracy, which is the luxury good that results from producing a population capable of following the incentives to maintain a middle class majority civilization of continuous prosperity. So we tell these half lies.
That's fictionalism, yeah?
Yeah, but we're lying.
So it's worse than fictionalism.
Well,
I'm looking at our narratives up above.
It's certainly a fiction, right? To be qualified as a fictionalism, we'd have to use pseudoscience, sophistry, or cult. We're not. We're just not. We're not telling. We're failing full accounting. We're failing full accounting to others and of ourselves.
Let's look at that narrative list so that we properly place it on that spectrum.
This one?
Yeah. It's a coercive fictional narrative.
Yeah, I think it's fictional. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not fraudulent. We're not trying to get anything out of it. Best we're trying to do is self-defense, right?
Okay. I did want to we talked about oppressively or oppression, which is a common Marxist term that's in use at the moment.
Oppression means domestication.
Well, we talked about it yesterday, and it's I think in the proper neutral terminology is coercive, socializing influences.
Well, that's the method. Okay, so let's ask about this. Let's do it. Let's do this. What did I say?
You said domesticating.
So
yeah.
Right. Domestication is just
okay.
All right, and the answer for that is velocity of cooperation produces
technical, material, and social benefit.
yeah, I'm trying to Um,
Okay. Yeah.
the hamster wheel has to spin. And it's really just a hamster wheel.
Oh no.
And so this is the problem, is there's a hamster, the hamster wants to run on the wheel once in a while, right? He doesn't mind getting something for it. The problem is when he has to run on the wheel.
Right. Right. He doesn't like that so much.
So what you're trying to do, is you're trying to I don't like it, and nobody else does, that people who haven't made bad decisions desperately have to worry about every penny and what they eat. It's actually unnecessary. The problem is that the running that lower end economy is really expensive, actually, the way we do it. Whereas, and I would have disagreed with this when I was younger, but it's possible to do that lower end economy a lot less expensively.
Right.
And unfortunately, the way we think about solving the problem is by exerting too much control. And by exerting too much control, what we do is centralize it. And by centralize it, we do whatever happens whenever you increase population density. You get 20 to 25% more of everything. And in the case of concentrating lower income people, you get 20 to 25% more bads with every doubling and almost no goods. Matter of fact, it's questionable if you get any goods.
Right.
So there's no value in concentrating them. So this is their basic strategy, is we should put people out there. The problem is that if you don't then say, okay, we'll distribute people, but we'll actually take these people who are demonstrably unfit and remove them from society, pulling up Hans Hop's physical removal, then of course you've got a problem, is because now what you've done is you've disavowed the fact that a tiny percent of the population that is obsessively criminal is responsible for a vast majority of crime, especially bad crimes. Whereas those people should, 3 strikes. In other words, 3 strikes really needs, you're never getting out. And that 3 strikes, we need to lower the standard of 3 strikes. I mean, people make mistakes. It's not the same if, like, you bust in on your 25-year-old guy and you bust in on your wife who's cheating on you and you smack the guy's head against the wall. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not the same thing as predation. Like the guy that got murdered a couple of days ago, a couple of black guys broke into his house and murdered him in the middle of the night. I mean, it's a fucking random predation. Or porch pirates. Why can't we shoot porch pirates? We should be able to shoot them. You know how much would happen how fast porch piracy would go away if neighborhoods just could hire one guy in with a shotgun? There wouldn't be porch pirates. And then we would
get off the subject of porch piracy.
Come on, I want to play with this.
Okay.
Okay, come on. I talk about something serious for half an hour. You got to give me a little reprieve.
Okay, a little bit of levity.
Levity. Anyway, I forgot where I was going to go.
Porch piracy.
Yeah, but I mean, it goes back to what is that? What's the, decrease the surplus? Let them decrease the surplus population.
Oh my. Humbug, right?
All right. So now I have to.
I gotta throw my levity in a little bit, because it's like I figured this first thing I wrote this morning, that Marx was right. It is class struggle, and this goes to this oppression and oppressively and the institutions of class coercion that we discussed yesterday. That it is class struggle, and it is the attempt of the upper class to mobilize the lower class to oppress the middle class. That is the issue here. That's what's going on, and it is oppression.
They don't want to adapt. What is their whole? What is Marx? No, come on. They don't want to adapt. And what is the group evolutionary strategy? Separatism. Why does they want to separate? So they don't have to adapt.
No, they want to destroy the middle class, separate by other means.
That's an externalization.
They don't want to suffer your existence as a middle class.
That's just the Marxist application of Marx's group evolutionary strategy.
Right, but I want to tie this to this, because it's like it goes to there's what we call the pressure to adapt, which is an external universal force, and the institutions, the cultural institutions are used to manipulate that force and aim it at a class to cause them to be subjected to the pressures of evolution, or I don't know how to call it other than that, which is the requirement to adapt from the lower class to the middle class, is what the Marxist strategy is. And the Western civilizational strategy is to cause it to bear on those least able to adapt.
I can't parse that. I'm going to try to restate it and tell them what's wrong.
Okay.
The European aristocratic model is parenting. The idea is that you'll move from barbarian to serf to slave, the barbarian to slave to serf to freeman to citizen to sovereign. Sovereign meaning helping someone govern, helping govern. It's the same thing as parenting. We're hoping you move from infant to child to youth to young adult to adult to mature adult to a wise aged adult, right? This is the same process. These are the same growth problems. And so the thing is, because it's self-determination by self-determined means, but because we have Christian charity, right? Is that we agree to support you if you try, even if you fail. In other words, there's a minimum support level.
Right.
That's called insurance.
Right.
Right. But if you refuse to try, or if you rebel, then we don't. So,
right.
So say someone is in a class, right? You're just saying that that's your duty and your compensation for the value you'll be able to provide to the group.
Right.
It's not an opinion.
Right.
It's not an opinion. And, the problem is that you standing next to somebody and you're a good person doing a good thing and you're doing your job and doing it well, and the guy next to you is complaining. Why? Why does that difference exist? Why is it that two people are providing the same value to others, and one person takes pride in it, and one person feels oppressed? Now, there's a material minimum that would have to be, right? In other words, some material minimum. I mean, you might feel you're a good person doing the right thing, and fitting into society and not breaking any rules and et cetera. And, you're raising a good family and all this other stuff. But you might feel you're a good social person, everything. You go to church, whatever. And you're standing next to the same guy who gets paid the same amount of money, but he's actually complaining and disrespecting and complaining about his station. Why is it that person thinks he or she is due more than he or she is able to demonstrate? Why? So that's the question. Now, if you'd say, I want more. Well, fucking A, man, we all want more.
Right.
I'd like to go back to the 90s.
It's the whiny child is what that is.
It's a whiny child. How do you discipline a whiny child? It's pretty hard, actually. So that's the problem we have to solve.
Oh, I know, but there's a certain neuroticism at work in the whiny child.
There you go.
I know, hang with me here. Now it is the pandering to the neuroticism to remove the to satisfy the desires that are unearned desires of the whiny child, to remove the adaptive requirements necessary for them to satisfy their own whininess or developmental needs. That is what the Marxists are pandering toward with this oppression narrative.
Correct.
Which, as opposed to the world is proper, is you're getting what you deserve for what you're putting into the system, right?
Right.
But so that I'm not satisfied with the narrative we have on.
I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to walk us there. So
Yeah.
what's the real problem? Is that person who's complaining? Because
That's the problem.
I can empathize. Is that person complaining because he's unsuitable to the work? In other words, he's unsuitable for the work because he's bored with the work.
But it could be.
Right? Because what was the first one I did?
He's whining. He's
unsuitable for the work.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if I want to be that general. He's unsuitable for the work. He's bored with the work.
He's unfit for that duty.
And then the last one is he's unfit. Right. So the problem is, why is that person having the issue? Now, I don't know if you've ever met any of these terminally lazy people, because they generally drop out of society. In other words,
I run into them more than you do.
Well, I bet that is. I remember, I can't remember what I was doing. I was filing some papers back, I don't know, must have been the 70s or 80s. And there was some woman talking about, well, she wanted a job. She wanted more money, more money for less hours, less work, and nicer bosses. And you can tell she's like got a 75 IQ. She's obese, right? There's no way to fix this problem, right? I mean, she's just unfit, period. Now you can, what?
We called them miserable.
Miserables. Right? Now, but there's plenty of people who, like, it's like, I love this one example. This guy I met, black guy met, probably 85 IQ, works at it constantly. He tries to read, right? He has great, one of those guys raised in the South, Christian, comes up for North because he wants better work, gets slightly better work, but he's got ambition. Look, dude, you just got to find a place to put that guy where it's his capacity. He's working at his successful capacity, right? It's not even the money.
Right.
He just wants to be able to work at his capacity, right?
Right.
I spent like 2 hours talking to this guy. It was fucking hysterical. And you can tell he's never had the opportunity to talk to anybody like me in his life, right? So I'm sitting there spending a couple of hours, and I fucking enjoyed every minute. And it's all over because do I buy this car or not? This Mercedes, right? And he's just one of the guys that works in the shop, right? He's not a salesman. And so he's like, oh, he's the guy that cleaned the car. That's what it was.
Okay. Okay.
And like this guy is gold, right? He's just got an 85 IQ.
Oh, yeah.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with this fucking guy. Work hard, great guy to interact with, good personality, humble, good Christian ethics, the whole thing. It's like, he's got to find a place where he's whatever. And the problem is we don't help people find that place. If we do, go ahead.
We had a couple guys like this that they're definitely not the brightest bulb on the tree. But it's like these guys, every time they come in the office, they're so happy. They're glad to see you, and they're sharp, and they go to work and they do their thing, and they're fit, and they're like this, they're just like this. I wanted to pay them to come to us because they make
Exactly.
the office shine. It's like, it's just awesome. I'm with it. I'm with
And
you.
it's contagious,
Yes.
right? And so that's what you look for. So the problem is, I'm going to put this out, is that we have HR departments and they do the absolutely wrong thing. Why? Because the people in them aren't competent. They're trying to solve the wrong problem, and they're not competent to solve the right problem.
They don't understand the problem, and they're trying to solve their problem, which is to
Right.
make it work enough that they can keep getting their pension.
So this is why I go back. I'm trying to bring this around.
Yes.
You know, I go back to the problem of having a church. Right now, we have this school system, and it's a fucking disaster. We have the post office, we have the library, we have the government, but we don't have a church. And when I say church, I don't mean like a place where you go talk to God. I mean a bunch of people who have taken an oath of non-aggression, an oath of not profiting from you, right? Whose pure purpose is to help you move through life. Now, we tell people you're an active agent fully capable of competing in an adversarial market competition against a vast majority of people who are superior to you, and without the knowledge, information, skills, and training to even understand the game you're playing in.
Or guidance.
Right. And so when I say church, that's what I mean. I mean, why don't we it's like, who's talking to me yesterday? So like, Kurt, can I bring my husband and can we come talk to you for a little bit? I want to, and basically it's not therapy, right? Therapy is when something is wrong, right? Coaching is when you want to achieve more. But there's some people, they just need problems. I mean, it's just normal life problems, and they're average people. Right? They can't afford to amass the knowledge we have. There's no priest anymore. Well, at least here in New England, I don't know the rest of the world, but in England and New England, I mean, when you went to the guys, they were like the highest they're the highest educated people in the community by far. And the same thing with England. I mean, the way they did it with England is they just stuck smart people in churches and paid them. And so it's like all our professors are fighting for tenure. How do you think the English did it? They just stuck all these guys in churches, right? And this community paid for having a smart guy around. Nobody has access to smart guys. It used to be we worked in small companies and small teams, right? So there was a hierarchy, so they could get access to a guy like you or a guy like me. What have we done is we squished all these guys down at the bottom, these women too. We squished them all at the bottom, and they have nobody to go to except ideology from the stupid tube.
All right. Right. I want to redirect.
I'm trying to get. I think I got through that that cycle.
No, yeah, you did. The issue, it goes like this, is that there is a natural force in the universe causing people to adapt. And it is the fictionalism that man-made agency can relieve you of that duty to adapt.
Yeah.
And redirect that force, that adaptive force, to another fraction of the population, which is what I was talking about yesterday, and it disturbed you a little bit, because they're reflecting it up from the lower class to the middle class by pandering to the lower class's desire to not adapt.
Correct.
Forcing the middle class to adapt to the man-made circumstance. That's where I'm trying to.
Yeah, and you just did it beautifully. So what we're trying to do instead is we're trying to continue helping you adapt and getting the reward for adaptation. What the communists are trying to do is say, kill the middle class and we'll take responsibility and you won't have to adapt. It sounds like a good deal, except what is the cost of every second of not adaptation times your population?
That's right.
It's called the failure of socialism.
It just takes enough time to consume the surpluses or whatever available capital there is to realize the loss.
Yeah. My friend Max said, back in when Stalin first take over, we could build these Stalin era buildings because we still had the craftsmen. By 1970, everybody'd forgotten how to be a craftsman.
Wow.
And so, I mean, it's like, I wish we could. I used to buy, back when I was interested in such things, I used to buy furniture, wood furniture, antiques, and I was always trying to get one of these from the 1600s, whatever, because I had all these beautiful pieces from the 17 and 1800s and right up into 1900. And I had a piece built in 1950 that was pitched as it was built in 1910. Those two exist too, right? They just built the same pattern, but I figured it out and I got a good deal on it. Anyway, but if you went into those places, you saw German woodworkers. If you could see German woodcraft, right, just by the mid 1800s, holy shit, that shit's amazing. If you go into, one of my favorite things is in Ukraine, one of the German sculptors went to Ukraine, and his name's escaping me, but it basically translates to the master. And there are all these wood statues all over Ukraine, religious statues all over Ukraine. And they have a beautiful style to them that it's not Giacometti-like, but it's on the route to Giacometti. It's not quite expressionist, but it's on the way there, right? It's got a beautiful, very specific style to it. And why? Because they couldn't afford marble. But this guy went around and produced amazing sculpture. I mean, I love this stuff. I mean, I love this stuff. But if you look at German woodworking, and there's a beautiful example in a hotel in California whose name I've forgotten, where the German craftsman died before the carver that they brought over. He died before he finished the last bit. And so you can see the pencil work.
Oh, wow.
Right? And you can see the graduation where he did all this stuff and he got around to this bend, becomes around, and it's not done. And you just see that, wow, it never occurred to me. You see some of the Japanese are, of course, they have an odd aesthetic, but it's still quite good. I mean, some of the Japanese carvers are wonderful. It's hardly to do with the kind of steel that was available then and whatever. So you see that stuff, but that stuff gets lost. It's like the stonemasons. We're trying to keep stonemasonry alive. Right? I studied a little stonemason. Stone carving.
No.
We're trying to keep stone carving alive, and there's too few people left to do it. Right? Some of these things get forgotten, and I think the one of the things I mentioned at the time is the Russians complaining that they lost how to weld complex metals just in 15 years. So anyway, I was going somewhere. Believe it or not, there was a point to what I was trying to say.
If you listen to this video 3 times, you may be able to figure it out. If you do, put it in the comments so Kurt can know too.
I know what I'm trying to get to. No, you said something. I was trying to complete it. Is that we forget.
The destruction of the middle.
We forget.
The destruction of the middle is this is interesting because it's the capital loss. It's not just a positive loss. It's like there's a loss of gain, which is really what irritated me about the mid 2000s.
Yep.
Like when I became aware, it's like the amount that you don't even know what you're foregoing because it hasn't come to fruition and you have just squelched it. And it's like, my God, you don't know what you've done.
Someday someone's going to figure out. It's like we can vaguely guess the cost of the Dark Ages. It's terrifying. Somebody's going to figure out what the post-war attack on our institutions cost in development. And you could certainly begin to measure what's happened to the ability of our population because of the academic decline and because of multiculturalism. You can somewhat measure that, but somebody's going to figure out what the cost was, which is what you're saying, the opportunity cost. What could have happened if we had not had the post-war revolt against Western civilization? because it's one of those things where you start measuring it in suffering, because you can't,
Right.
in the suffering in between, because the monetary number is so large, it's
meaningless. Yeah.
it's meaningless. And so when you see, like I said this to somebody's asking me yesterday, and I said, well, look at South America. They went for socialism, but they had a window of opportunity where they were a close European country with Christianity, with rule of law, and with the ability to produce democracy. Right? They had European traditions, European institutions. They had the church. Yet because they bought for socialism, what they did is they allowed the rest of the world to equate prices to the fact that now they have no way to go from A to B. They lost their window. So what's the cost of South America of that decision? That false promise. It's terrifying. Anyway.
Did we do a good work today?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get to, I want to make sure that we've got 20 minutes
cover-
left, and I want to just
Cover the
get to
base.
closure. So the point here was that if we take out the falsehoods, in other words, if we remove falsehoods from the calculation, in other words, if we go up to here and we remove as much of the falsehood as possible.
Wait, I would like to, how about variation from truth?
Well, that's okay. Yeah, okay. Much variation from truth as possible. What you end up with is the first principles that are always going to be there, which are genetic differences, which is that the female female cognition is built for children and resources, which is a herd demand, and the male is for peers and territory, which is a pack demand. And so these are two different, these are very short term, these are longer term. And so you have the left is driving for hyperconsumption genetics, the right is driving for hypercapitalization and eugenics. The left of center is driving for consensus utility, and the right is deciding conflicts. This is actually what we want. In other words, it's not like we should just go to some one thing.
Right.
What we want is evolution, the scope of evolutionary computation to decide those via positivas, right? Those via positivas that do not violate the via negativas. So,
right. So that it's cooperative and exploratory and generative.
Correct. I want to capture that. Cooperative,
exploratory, and generative. That's calculation.
Yep. Right. Right. So this is, I don't know how long we spent on that conversation.
It was work, man. That was work.
But the point we were trying to get to is that I say, well, we're looking for a system of measurement, right? And then we're looking, at what are the problems in that system of measurement, and then how do we eliminate the problems so that we result in the system of measurement, and how do we get people to that point of being able to do so? Well, the test is the natural laws. Truth is the same. Preference is different in cultures, and variations attributable to preference or maybe necessity given local circumstances. But externalities produced by your preference are a matter of truth, falsehood, amorality, tort, and crime. They're not a matter of opinion. And the difference, and your perception of whether your sieve is good is simply false, simply meaningless.
It's just an opinion. True or not? Is true or not?
What's true and good?
Okay. So good as an opinion, which is spelled incorrectly, is not the same as good as a matter of fact. Your subjective lived experience is as good is not meaningful in the sense of true, false, or decidable. Testable, right? Empirical.
Why is that? Why? That's because, I got lost there.
It's empirical.
Because your measure of good is not a full accounting. Right.
Right, that recurses very nicely back to those narratives.
So this is the problem, is because so it's like one of those things is it's like the more you know about what we're doing here, P-law and Esh law, the more everything becomes so much easier because you have a standard of measure. So once you have a standard of measure, a vocabulary for measuring it, it's like, well, the difference between these things is just these things by the first principles, the causal axes. And so there's quite a few factors here. Maybe there's 5 factors that measure this difference, but it's not an unambiguous unknowable anymore. Excuse me, it's not an ambiguous unknowable anymore. It's an unambiguous knowable. And people hate that. It's like, people want to hold on. Wait a minute. People hate that. Like you and I are, I kill my sacred cows all the time. You're happy to kill your sacred cows, right? But most people are not.
But that's a matter of ignorance and preference. I don't regard it as, I think they're not knowledgeable enough to be hateful of it, because it's like they're ignorant of it. And they wish to remain so. Thank you very much.
Well, okay, I'll take that. Right? They wish to remain so. They fail to adapt. Anyway,
so much work to have your sacred cow murdered. Right in
front I'm not giving up on I've decided I'm not giving up on the women thing. I'm going to keep my illusion quite by intent.
And see what happens.
I'm just going to keep it because I can know it, but I don't have to practice it.
This goes to this premise. So I like there are certain people that I used to think were crazy, and now I think they were just early adapters. And
yes.
And it's like this. So there are certain of the people that I think are crazy that I choose to wish remain crazy, regardless of the factuality of it. And it has to do with the people who believe in the lizard people that are running the world. And it's like, I don't want to believe that. And I don't care if it's true. I don't want to believe it. I'm not going to accept any evidence of it. So thank you. Don't bring it. No lizard people, damn it.
Oh, God.
Right?
That's too hysterical.
It's all very good. It's all very good.
Well, God, you just said something. Yeah, it's like I was thinking the other day is, there's people you'd like to be for a day or a week or a month,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any people like that, but it's for me, it's like it's usually something ordinary. Like I'd like to be Russell Brand for a month.
There you go.
Right? You know what I mean? Because he's hysterical. And he's quite an interesting character, and it's like he sounds like he's a leftist, but he's really not.
He probably thinks he's a leftist.
He thinks he is. He's really pretty central. He just is, just uses it. But the way he works people, what bothers me, he's got that trance. His look is like close to Manson, except that he's the opposite.
Yes.
Right. And he's so good at it, and you watch the effect it has on people. Right. It's amazing. I just like to be in his orbit for a while. I don't know if I could stand being him because of whatever he's done to his body. But I mean, the fact that he's so unapologetically a hippie.
Right.
Right. It's just a beautiful thing, right? But most of the guys I want to be like, they're like ordinary guys. Like they have a family, and they have a job they like, and they have a bunch of friends, and they go out on weekends, and they go hunting with the boys, and it's like, I'd like to be you. But
yeah, no doubt. It's like there was a guy that I worked in a factory for a while, and it's like there was a guy there, and he was he's old at the time for me, and he was 60, probably 60s, and it was like he had a 3rd grade education. And I was impressed by this guy because he could be happy doing his job, working that place, and taking care of his family. And I'm like, that's it. You know what? I'm tipping my hat, because it's like, because I can't do it.
Exactly.
There's just no way I can do it. And I'm like,
yep.
I tip my hat, because it's like that's admirable to find your place and then work your station, right?
It's like, and they're like, well, you have all that you do. I'm like, dude, the difference between you and me is, I just have more shit to worry about, right? With a longer time horizon over which I have less agency.
Right.
Right. I mean, it just sucks. And so you think it's great, but I mean, the truth is, and it's like everybody says once they've been wealthy, is that it just doesn't.
It looks to me like the grass greener problem.
It just doesn't fucking matter. What you want is enough not to worry.
Right.
So basically live within your means.
There you go. Right. And a little below.
Right. And you're fine. Right. It's not hard. The problem is, it's like for some of us, we just can't do that. Now there's people who can't do it for like us. It's positive. We'll just keep climbing because it's just the climbing is what is interesting in and of itself. Right. Right. And there's the opposite side, the negatives, the people who complain. They'll keep complaining no matter what happens, right? It's those beautiful people in the middle that they find their spot.
I tip my hat because it is.
I just love them.
right?
Whoa.
I ran into a guy, this guy was another guy, he had a sixth grade education or something. He would make wooden barns. Like, and he would do it by himself. And I went into one of these oak barns he was making. I'm like, wow, it's just like, I said, you could run a team of guys. He goes, why would I want to do that? I'm like,
I've met a bunch of carpenters like that. They're like, nah. It's like the work of explaining their mind to others is just not worth it. What you do find is some guys, they can use a runner.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But other guys, the running is part of the joy. It's a time to think. So if I need some more 6-penny nails or 8-penny
Drive
nails,
over there and take a
I'm gonna
minute, to talk to the
drive,
guy,
come
talk to
back, pat my dog.
right.
You know, it's control of the pace of life.
Nice.
And so they that's what they find. Now some guys, you know, as they get older, they like runners. I know a guy who's I haven't talked to him in a couple of years, but at the last time I talked to him, he was in his 80s. He was still building homes by hand.
Wow.
And he did it with a small group of people.
Nice.
Of course, he's one of those guys, like he's built more like wiry as fuck, right? I mean, every muscle, right? It's like, well, I'm not retiring because I'll just die. So I'm going to just work until, because you can tell why. He's operating at his pace, at his capacity, where he gets consistent successes.
Right.
The problem with the dysfunctional people is they find no way to get success.
Right.
And so, you know, I always wonder if they're curable or not. I don't think so. You know, the guys who are overexcited, the guys who can who they crash and have an epiphany, those guys are fixable. You just have to let the fuckers. You said this yesterday, right?
Yeah.
You have to let people crash.
It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch.
Right?
You can't grab the anchor. You can let them do their thing and they'll bounce.
Yep. And that's when you need the Christian guys to come in and say, God loves you. You're going to be fine, right? And they just stick by you with that constant, God, Jesus loves you, God love whatever, depending on which one you're on, right? And they stick with you, and you're like, shit, this is a lot better. You know, the thing what I like is that we figure out if you put people on ketamine or one of these other things, they can make that leap without crashing.
That's nice.
We just got to get. I mean, it's too much work to run that medical investigation. But that, you know, I could, you know, just knowing how the brain works, you can tell that's going to work.
There's malincentives here because it's like there's something to get them on the pharmaceutical train and the malincentives all along the pathways because you're worth more kind of sick than get fixed.
Well, I think that you're probably right, but let's flip it the other way and say, you know, I'm pretty sure the future looks a lot more like that than it does therapy, because it's the fastest way to rewire your brain.
No, I know, but it's like they don't want to do the research to do it.
Yes. Now there's a legit reason. Legit reason is, and I was explaining this to somebody who asked me yesterday, is there's like the panic attack collapse. That's your body telling you, I can't do this anymore. Right? Like I've had them, right? I had them bad for a while. Oh. Why? I gained too much weight, wasn't sleeping well, right? Too much stress at the office. I thought I was fine. Drank too much caffeine one day and all of a sudden had a panic attack. And I'm like, holy shit, I thought I was going to die, right?
Oh,
right? Yeah. And the worst problem is it didn't go away, right? The feeling kept staying. And I'm like, well, you know, and they tell you, you're just going to have to suffer through it, right? We don't have to suffer through it. If you went and you had a therapy like that, you can rewire immediately because you can disconnect from that neural structure and create a new one. But we have no way of doing it. It's like when therapists the therapist talked to me when I was a kid. So just imagine you're watching yourself and see how you feel. Click, rewired my head instantaneously. Right? You know, and some people have to have Jordan Peterson. Why does he talk in mysticism? Because he's using suggestion, so you don't have to directly address the question. It's a new pathway, right? What do these therapies do? What does hallucinogens? what I mean, not necessarily hallucinogens, but excitement stimuli, autoassociative stimuli do,
Right.
is they allow you to develop a new pathway around it, especially if you can get to the state of what they call disconnection, where you're observing yourself so that you can make the independent judgment, right? And rewire, right? It's not from a computer scientist perspective, it's a rather obvious problem, right? I mean, you just have to be able, there's just got to be a way of getting the brain there. Where's I go? Oh, so the problem is you have the panic attack, which is physical. Then you have the psychosis effect, which is mental. And then you have the schizophrenic effect, which is brain structure, right? So the problem you have here is that this is an escalating pathway of physical, cognitive, emotional, and in class. I mean, and so this is a system of collapse of your body just giving up. Now, why your body gives up, God knows. It might be physical, it might be behavioral, and whatever. I was trying to go God damn it, I did not get enough sleep last night. It's obvious because I woke up this morning and like, what is that, guys? I've done this and this thing. I keep forgetting what I'm talking about. So anyway, this cognitive collapse is a pretty obvious problem that I think can be overcome by this. The problem here, I remembered what it was, is that you can actually take somebody into psychosis, and you can take somebody into schizophrenia by the same process of autoassociative excitement. And so that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of a real thing, which is a tiny percentage of people, if you give them this autoassociation, will flip the bit the wrong direction. And so that's what and that's a legitimate fear. The thing is, we can pretty much test you, but it takes a while, right? And so nobody wants to bear the risk of the 0.01% of people who are going to turn into schizophrenics, because it happens.
And it's rude.
Well,
it's really rude to be a schizophrenic. It's a hard thing to be.
So, I mean, the 60s anti-psychotic, right, anti-drug movement was fucking, but on this was anti-psychedelic movement, excuse me, was wrong. But we've discovered that it's not just, it's not just a function of, yes, this can be really good. It's the function of some number of people have an adverse reaction, and that adverse reaction is catastrophic.
Well, it goes to this. It's informed consent.
Yes.
Is surgery is dangerous. Some people die. It's unavoidable consequences of the intervention.
Yeah, I think the difference is when you die, that's you fix the problem.
The problem is self-limited, right?
Right. The problem with schizophrenia is it's self-expanding. It's externalizing, because that's a horrible thing, and so you're stuck with it. So it's sort of like it turns into something that you just don't want to be responsible for. Anyway,
I hear your neighbor's son at work.
Oh, you can hear it today. Yeah, I got to go up and tease them. What are you guys doing? You building the Great Wall of China up here?
Building the ark. It's all very good.
Well, my house is beginning to look like, it's gone from looking like a bachelor pad to a dorm room. So either today or tomorrow, I got to start working on this mess.
The pizza boxes.
It's just, I'm not, I'm usually a neat freak and put stuff away, but I mean, there's like a cereal box out and blanket over there and some stuff that fell on the floor over there and some dishes I got to do and a pile of laundry. And I got enough energy for these 3 hours right now, but I don't, once I get about another hour's worth of energy. That's all.
You want to go another round?
Today?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm asking.
Look, can we stop this session and start a new one?
We can have a coffee break.
Okay.
I'll put the recording on pause.
No, let's not though. It's just better for YouTube if we break it here.
Okay.
And so just stop the recording and start a new.
And then I'll give you a new link.
Yeah.
All
okay,
right.
boss.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.